Good morning. This meeting is now called to order. Charlie, you're holding up the show. Ms. Gaynor, will you introduce our visitors, please?
See what I can do. Barry's not in his regular seat.
Oh, no.
I'll start with Dr. Deborah Garrison today. She's our Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs and the Dean of the Graduate School. Have Mike Taylor, our Internal Auditor. Valerie Maxwell, Director of Budget and Management. Chris Stovall is our Controller. Dirk Welch is the Chair of the Staff Senate. Barry Maka is our General Counsel. Over here we have Charlie Carr, who's Director of Athletics. This is Dr. Martin Camacho, Dean of the Lamar D. Fain College of Fine Arts. Ann Mark is reporter for the Times Record News, and Cindy Ashcroft, Executive Assistant to the President.
Okay, thank you. So welcome again, and thank you for participation in our lengthy committee meetings yesterday. I will apologize again for the length of yesterday, but we accomplished a lot, and I do appreciate the hard work yesterday. Just a reminder, we are being streamed live on the internet. Please silence or turn off your cell phones. Be aware that side discussions around the table or the room are distracting and may be heard through the microphones. We provide an opportunity for public comment concerning agenda items at the beginning of each meeting, and no one has signed up, so we will move on. We'll take items 14, 171, 172, and 173 together. These are the approval of the minutes of the May 8th, 9th, and July 21st board meetings. The minutes of the July meeting are in your folder. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, they will stand approved as presented. We'll now move to the consent agenda. The Executive Committee met yesterday, and our report is as follows. Item presented for committee approval only, 14-138 committee minutes. Items presented for informational purposes only, 14-140 campus construction update. Item 14-141 hail damage claim. Items approved by the committee and placed on the consent agenda. Item 14-139 MSU Strategic and Action Plan 2014 through 2015 academic year. Approved the plan as presented. Phase 1 housing. Approved contracting with Trainer Architects for this project. Approved the site for this new housing as a parking lot located west of Killingsworth and Pierce. And approved bonding authority on the project not to exceed $30 million. Item 14-143 Emergency Management Plan. Approved the plan including annexes A, B, C, E, I, M, N, O, Q, V, and resolution as presented. Really?
Really.
Okay. 14-141. We could have just done the whole alphabet. I mean.
What?
Item 14-144 Wichita Falls Museum of Art at MSU Advisory Board. Approved appointments to the advisory board as presented. Item 14-145 Wichita Falls Museum of Art at MSU ratification of extension artworks, ratified the extension of items into the museum's permanent collection as presented. I recommend approval of this consent agenda as presented. Would anyone like to remove items from the consent agenda for further discussion? If not, do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Dr. Gibbons, please present the Academic and Student Affairs Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Academic and Student Affairs Committee met yesterday. Our report is as follows. We had one item presented for committee approval only. That was item 14-146, our committee minutes. We had 5 items that were presented for information only. 14-147 was the faculty report. 14-148 was the staff report. 14-149 was the student government report. 14-150 was the athletics report. 14-151 was the enrollment report for the summer of 2014. The following items were approved by the committee and placed on the consent agenda. Item 14-152, the August 2014 graduating class. Approved the list of candidates for graduation. Item 14-153, academic graduate major title change. Approved change in the title of the major in counseling offered through the Master of Arts degree program by the West College of Education to a clinical mental health major. Item 14-154 was a reassignment of the Bachelor of Applied Arts and Sciences degree program. Authorized reassigning the BAAS program from the Prothero Yeager College of Humanities and Social Sciences to the West College of Education as presented. Item 14-155 was the MSU handbook changes. Approved changes to the Code of Student Conduct regarding the definition of stalking, and Student Conduct Committee hearings procedures are presented. Item 14-156, there were 4 MSU policies and procedure manual changes. We approved changes to the policies noted below as presented. These were the 4 sections. A, Policy 3.313, Vehicle Operator's License Requirement. Item B, Policy 3.321, the Employee Insurance. Item C was Policy 4.412, Police Department Administration and Regulatory Ordinances. D was Policy 4.169, Summer Camps and Conferences. Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of this consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Gibbons. Would anyone like to remove items from the consent agenda for further discussion? If not, the committee chair has recommended approval. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Dr. Stewart, do you have an introduction you want to make to us? I know we've already
Yes, sir.
met Dr. Camacho, but I think you've got some things you want to say.
I do somewhere. There I go. Vice Chair, please. I'd like to introduce to the board Dr. Martin Camacho, who will begin on Monday as our Dean of the Lamar D. Fain College of Fine Arts. Dr. Camacho has a bachelor's degree in piano performance from the Institute Superior Art in Cuba. He has a Master of Music in Piano Performance and a Professional Studies Diploma from the Cleveland Institute of Music in Cleveland, Ohio. And he has a Doctor of Musical Arts from the University of Miami School of Music. He comes to us from, he also has a Master of Business Administration from Barry University in Florida. He comes to us from Alabama State, where he was Chair and Associate Professor of Music. And prior to Alabama, he was Dean of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences at the Community College of Rhode Island. We are delighted to have Martin join us, and just wanted to present him to the board today.
Welcome, Martin.
And I might add that he and his family just drove in last night, and they're waiting on the movers this morning, so I know he's ready to go and meet the movers, but we're happy to have him.
And his recital, first recital.
Yes, sir. And he will be giving a community recital in Aiken Auditorium on August 21st, as Thursday night at 7 o'clock. If you're in town and you're available, we'd love to have you. He is a concert pianist, and he's well known, so we look forward to his great recital.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Bernhardt, would you please present the Finance Committee report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Finance Committee met yesterday, and our report is as follows. The items presented for committee approval only: 14-157, committee minutes. Items presented for information only: 14-158, summary of financial summary, or support rather. 14-159, summer school investment report. 14-160, waiver of fees, military personnel report. Items approved by committee and placed on consent agenda: 14-161, financial reports. Accepted the monthly financial reports for April, May, and June of 2014. 14-162, investment report. Accepted the third quarter 2014 investment report. Item -163, university signature authorizations, approval signature authorizations as presented. 14-164, approval of asset holding accounts and investment vehicles. Approved the list as presented. 14-165, financial year 2014, items $50,000 and under. Ratified the budget changes as presented. 14-166, personnel report and changes in 2013-2014 budget. Ratified the changes as presented. 14-167, operating budget for fiscal year 2015. Approved the $99,883,979 operating budget for 2014-2015 fiscal year as presented. Chairman Hessing, I recommend approval of these consent items as presented.
Mr. Bernhardt, would anyone like to remove items from the consent agenda for further discussion? If not, the committee chair has recommended approval. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Mr. Sanchez, please present the Audit Compliance and Management Review Committee report.
Yes, the Audit Compliance and Management Review Committee met yesterday, and our report is as follows. Item presented for committee approval only, 14-168, committee minutes. Items presented for information only, 14-169, audit activities, 14-170, contract management activities. Chairman Hudson, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Move on to item 14-174, Board of Regents meeting dates for 2014 and 15. The proposed meeting dates for the coming year are listed in your agenda. Dr. Gibbons, I understand that you have a conflict with the November date, but just after talking to Dr. Rogers, we understand there's a university conflict if we move it a week. So what I'd like to do at this point is ask if there's any other conflicts that anybody's aware of for those dates. Okay? If not, we're going to show those approved as presented. Okay? Item 14-175, the President's Report. Dr. Rogers.
Mr. Chairman, do we need a legal opinion to let me combine these two reports? Okay, all right, I will, because they cover the same issues, but, thank you.
I guess if Barry, Barry
Okay.
hasn't jumped up.
All right, good.
Barry, you been awake over there? Okay, go.
Of course, this has been an off session. There's been a lot of hearings. The coordinating board, and here's where I'm combining, has been having one of the most important things that they've been doing is that they've been resetting formulas and making recommendations will be making recommendations to the legislature about our appropriation for the next the fiscal year after the one that we just approved yesterday. As far as the legislative update is concerned, our first budget hearing is September the 17th, so it's time to go to work. That hearing will be before the Legislative Budget Board and the Governor's Office of Budgets and Planning. If any of you have the opportunity to join me and listen to that, you're certainly welcome to do that. Do we know the location yet, Debbie? It will be in Austin?
It will be in Austin.
It will be in Austin this year. I will make a presentation about Midwestern State University. I'll certainly emphasize those things that we've done and accomplished. I'll emphasize our planning and other things that we have all been working on, so that's expected of me. They will then question me, and I will also talk about the legislative appropriation request, particularly capital construction, and one other exceptional item that you've seen that's a small exceptional item that's in there. They will certainly question me about the capital construction, the rest of the LAR, and they will cover many of the issues that we deal with in their questioning of me. So I will do my very best, and this is really where we start the legislative process. I will say it's hard to predict, but over the many years that I've been involved in this sort of thing, when the Legislative Budget Board finishes hearings and puts this together, their initial budget, or their base budget, really holds up. Now, they will probably not have anything in there dealing with capital construction in their base budget, but pretty much their recommendations that deal with everything else, including the funding that comes to us through formula, have historically held up during the legislative session. So I think it certainly is an important hearing, although there will be hearings before several other committees before and during the legislative session. But that's our first one. It goes without saying we're going to have a new governor, a new lieutenant governor, but the teams, and as a consequence, we'll have new chairs of the Appropriations and Finance and House Higher Education, committees. These committees will have a lot to do with our appropriation and with the legislative appropriation requests and our capital funding that we talked about. We're eager to know who these chairs will be so we can begin to work with them. The actual session, as you probably know, begins January 13th, 2015. And some key issues for Midwestern State University before this legislative session certainly is formula funding. The Texas economy, the money that flows into the funds that they use to fund us is very strong this year, but certainly there are great issues facing the state that are expensive items. Our highways, Texas Department of Transportation, as you all know, it really is very important. We have water issues and water planning all over this state that's going to get attention, and we have yet to know what's going to happen to public school funding, which is going to have a lot to do with expenditures from the state. So we will be contending with state agencies and state issues as far as funding of higher education. As I read from the coordinating board, their committees have recommended an increase of somewhere around 5 to 6% for the total pool of money to be appropriated based on formulas. Now, as Dr. Foley said yesterday, of course, your formula mix and your total credit hour production will have a lot to do with that total appropriation. But a 5 or 6% increase in the total pool would be extremely helpful. One of the interesting things to come out of this session, and this is where I'm jumping over the coordinating board, is this: we had 1 year incentive funding, 2 years. We've been discussing incentive funding since I chaired the Formula Study Committee for several years ago. It's been off again and on again, and what this as the push is in many states, and certainly in this state, is that universities get some of their funding based upon outcomes-based performance. In other words, we're going to be appropriated based on how well we do on some metrics that I'm going to tell you about. Now, this is going to be phased in if it does happen and the legislature accepts it over a 3-year period. The nice thing about this is the coordinating board is recommending that we pick within limits our own metrics that we use to grade ourselves. And some of these fit us quite well. We look very good in some of these metrics, and I'm going to tell you what they are in just a minute. The HEAF review is going on, as Dr. Foley said yesterday. She is on that review committee. We've not had an increase in HEAF since 1995. We get $3.5 million a year for capital equipment. We can bond some of that, and we can certainly use it for campus projects and largely use it for major pieces of equipment that have a longer lifetime. So it's restricted, but is extremely important money. If that were to be increased, that would be a very basic, fundamental, great part of our appropriation that would mean a lot to us. So let's see how that goes, and let's see if they do raise HEAF funding. And as I don't know if any of you remember far enough back to remember that HEAF came as a result of trying to give non-permanent university fund schools a funding base for capital changes in the campus and as well as capital funding, and it has not been changed often. So I feel that there's a good chance that will happen, and that'll make a lot of difference. Hazelwood waivers. We're now up to about $1.2 million, maybe more, in waivers. I see those waivers growing as our services are pulled back, and we have veterans families and that are eligible for Hazelwood funding. We are not going to ask for that $1.2 million. I don't think it's really politically feasible. I will call it to their attention about how much it's costing MSU. Other universities will testify to that too, but it is going to be upwards of multiple millions of dollars as that Hazelwood exemption continues to grow. It is well intended. It is certainly justified. It's just a matter of not the university's not paying for it from its tuition, but the state paying for it. So we'll see if there is something done about Hazelwood. That unfunded mandate, if it were corrected, would be just like a direct appropriation based on our formulas, if we could get that. Capital construction funding, we talked about that a lot yesterday. We're dependent on it. We've been encouraged that this is the session that there will be capital construction funding. There will be a couple of bills introduced. We know who will introduce them. It'll be interesting right from the beginning to see what is introduced for Midwestern State University, and that tells us a lot about what we're going to be able to do with our planning. Let me skip over just a minute and give you an idea of those metrics that would determine our outcome-based funding, or at least 10% of it. I think it's very interesting. We can pick our own metrics. One of them we can totally take out. The others must sum to 100%. So we've got to use these metrics within limitation. One is total undergraduate degrees. We've done very well on that the last few years. You know, we've had the largest graduating classes in the history of this university. Undergraduate degrees adjusted by graduation rate certainly is something we have to look at. Undergraduate degrees per 100 undergraduate full-time student equivalents. And what this really means, after I read it, I wanted credit for it. I suggested this 6 years ago when I chaired this committee. The graduation rate today is based upon your full-time, first-time freshman that entered. That's your base. We have of the total freshmen we get, a small number really, relative to the total class, are full-time, first-time freshmen. That's what it's based on. We then look 4 years later and 6 years later to see the percentage that graduate. It struck me one time when I looked at the graduating class out there, what our enrollment is and how many students are graduating, and realized that we graduate over 20% of our entire student body every year. And I thought to myself, our real graduation rate, how many people who enter and how many people who graduate. And we should scale that based on it. And that would pick up those students who come in here, who transfer into the institution, who start part-time. All of those people we don't count now eventually do graduate. So I think that's going to be a metric that we will probably recommend to you all that we use. Another metric is the undergraduate degrees of at-risk students. I don't know the percentage of at-risk students at Midwestern State now, but in most institutions, it's pretty high. At-risk students are those who are enrolled part-time, who hold a GED, or they enroll after age 20. Statistically, we can look at all of those kinds of characteristics of students and tell what their graduation is going to be if we have enough data. We have probably a pretty high at-risk student body, and we do a pretty darn good job of graduating those students too. The last is our retention rates after 30 hours, 60 hours, and 90 hours. So we will be prepared to pick out our metrics and see which one we want to delete if we do, and that should play into the outcome-based funding. I have always been an advocate of outcome-based funding. It is beneficial to the university. The years that it was used gave us quite an appropriation. We got an extra $800,000 per year based on similar metrics for this. So we have a lot coming up and a lot to find out this coming spring. So we'll know much more about our capital construction and our budget situation come May the 31st if we don't have a special session. So thank you.
Perfect.
We have copies of our legislative request. We also, they'll be online, and if you'd rather have an electronic copy, it's your choice. So just let me know before you leave, and you can have a copy of all the tables that
Yeah,
are together. So.
and I do encourage you, if you have an opportunity to go to Austin, if I'm able to go down and back in a day and testify and it works for your schedule, you're certainly welcome to come and watch the process. I think you would be rather impressed with the thoroughness with which administrators from universities are questioning about their universities and about their requests.
What day is it?
September 17th. I think it's a Wednesday. And I'll be in Austin most of next spring, so if you ever have occasion to be at the Capitol, I would love to take you around and introduce you to your local legislators, whoever they may be.
All right, perfect, thank you. The Board of Regents will now go into executive session to discuss items 14-176 presidential search, 14-177A consultation with attorney, and 14-177E gifts or donations as allowed by Texas Government Code sections 551.071, .073, and .074. For the record, the date is August 8, 2014. The time is
9:26.
Dr. Rogers, the Vice Presidents, Mr. Maka, Mr. Taylor, Mr. Carr, and Ms. Barrow may remain for the first part of this discussion. Please stop the webcast.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
We're back.
Okay, wait. Hold on. Put all my stuff aside. Okay. Okay, we're back in session after that executive session. Nothing was voted on except for one thing. Does anybody have to make a motion under 14-176?
I certainly do.
Thank you.
Well,
Mr. Chair, I move that the Board of Regents authorize the administration to negotiate and accept a donation of 2 small parcels of land located northwest of the Wichita Falls Museum of Art at Midwestern State University.
Thank you, Kenny. We have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. That concludes our meeting for today. Thank you for participating. See you next time.
You did that on purpose.